Welcome, everybody. My name's Karen Emmons, and this session is going to be on using Scilympiad for coaches. Scilympiad for coaches. The Scilympiad program is written by an avid SO fan, a professional programmer, and we've selected to use it this year because it is by far the best product we found to do virtual testing in a Science Olympiad format. It's an amazing program. The students take the test together with their partner from separate locations. They can see what the other one is entering. They can chat in the interface with each other. They can chat and ask questions of a remote event supervisor. It monitors the time controls that Science Olympiad utilizes, and it even will help us grade parts of the test, the things like multiple choice questions and true false. So there's a lot to really like about this program. However, just to kind of give you a heads up, unlike our VASO portal, which if you've been with us in the past, you've experienced, the VASO portal allowed us to call the shots and to do things in our own way by using Scilympiad. So Scilympiad is going to change some of our procedures. So even if you are an expert coach, please read communications and instructions that we send on this topic. Some things are quite different, and we'll be highlighting them as we go through. So a general overview, I'm on the Virginia Scilympiad site now. Every Science Olympiad organization uses Scilympiad, that uses Scilympiad will have its own website domain, right? So each invitational or tournament you may go to will have a different site. Now within a site or a domain, each tournament is a separate entity. And if you're running teams from more than one division, each division is a separate entity as well. That's something useful to keep in mind as we talk about the software. And I'll point out the impacts of that. But some of the information is kept at kind of a national level, and it will be shared across any of the domains or websites that you go to. And sometimes that can be confusing about what is shared, what is new at every domain or every website for each tournament. So I'm going to be highlighting that as we go through today. One useful tip that I wanted to give you before I forget though, Scilympiad logs you out. It gives you a strange error message after 40 minutes of downtime. So save your work often and don't just leave it open. All right. So registering, that's the first task, and we're just going to kind of go through this in an order. To register for Virginia Regionals, actually on our website, I'm just going to quickly show you that we have a page that has instructions about registering. Registering at Scilympiad does not complete registration with us. So there are steps here to follow. I'm not going to go through those steps. That's not what this is about, but you can find them on our website. So, but as a coach, you will need an account in Scilympiad that is linked to a school/division. And you may have a second division. You may be doing B and C, like if you're Tandem Friends or Dominion Christian. You might have both linked to your account. First, you're going to make a single account, and then I'll show you where to add a division later. But for most of you, that's not an issue. And by the way, I should have said this earlier. Some of you are completely new coaches and you're figuring out what Science Olympiad's about. And I may say things that are very confusing about where you don't understand exactly what I mean by event schedule or things like that. That's what we will be discussing in the next hour. So just kind of make a mental note or jot down on a piece of paper your questions, and we will be discussing all that the next hour. Now, the account that you as a coach make will be at a national level. So once you've established the account, you can use it on any Scilympiad site. You don't need a different login each time. You will register in other domains, but it's really just introducing your account to the other website. So you register with us as a coach by clicking on login in the upper right, and then you click on new member, and you give us the information that it asks. So it'll ask for you to an email and create a password, and then after you register, it's going to ask you your name and which school, and create a school profile and so forth. So you just go through that and follow your nose. A few registration tips though. As you create and link yourself to a school, and you need to link yourself, you need to create an account, call yourself a coach, and link yourself to create a school profile. And in the school profile, it's going to ask you what regional date you want. Just make your best guess. There are 2 regional dates, January 30th and February 6th, and you can change your regional date all the way until December 31st. Scilympiad will register you with 1 team. You can change that too. I'm also going to show that later. And then there's something in the profile of the school that it asks you to fill out called Club Advisor. That's what we call in Virginia a school sponsor, school liaison. And you can see the registration instructions on the VASO website for more information if you're uncertain about how to do that. So that's how you make the basic account. I'm going to log in my coach's account here. And, sorry. And let's see. Come on, again. All right, I have 2 divisions. You're not going to get that. So when you log in to your account the first time after you create it, you're going to come to the head coach dashboard. And this is where you're going to do most of everything that you need to do. So I'm going to go over some of the key functionalities on that. On the coach dashboard, you have register update teams. So that's where you would go if you wanted to add another team. So I could add another team, I could remove a team. I could name them. So if I don't like the name levers, I can call it pulleys. And, and then it's changed for the tournament and everything else. So this is where you do that. Let's go back. To get to the head coach dashboard, you can always find it under coaches. There's update school profile. That's actually, remember I told you were going to be creating a school profile when you first logged in and made an account. You'll come here, you'll do that. This is where you'll pick the regional that you want. There's plenty of room in both regionals, so don't worry about that. You'll give just a mailing address, the club advisor. But this is where you would go after you've created this form. You're presumably not going to change too much about it except potentially the regional. But this is where you would go. In the profile is where you've declared which regional you want. Oops. Okay, sometimes registration fees. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Invite coaches. This is where you go to invite your co-coaches to share an account with you. The first coach for a school division is the one who creates the school profile. And then that person has to invite co-coaches so that you all share the same school account, right? You all want to see the same list of students and so forth. If they come in and they try to make an account on their own, in the way that I showed you before, they're just going to have 2 accounts for the school. And that's a problem. That's bothersome to sort. So instead, make sure you invite coaches. It's easy enough to do. There's just instructions on how to do it. Add a co-head coach. You'll give some information about them. It'll send an email. They can create an account linked to the profile. High school coaches. You can have a student leadership team that you also invite to do this. Please read the instructions for how to do that on the VASO Registration Club Officer Guidelines. That's also on the page. It's here. We don't actually really want a lot of high school student emails in the system, so talked about making an alias and so forth, and about the way that we would honestly prefer that you created an account for your student leadership. So do read that if you want to do that. I encourage you to get your coaches in because there's going to come a spot fairly soon, actually, where all the emailing I'm going to do is going to come out of Scilympiad. So if you have a co-coach that should be getting those kinds of emails about the tournament and whatnot, that's the place they need to be in there to do that. Now, on my account, I have selected other division. In yours, it would say add another school division, right? I've already done that task, but if you do that, that's where if you have a division, if you register a B team and you're doing C, you can also add a C version as well to your account. And then finally, I don't have it, but you eventually may. If you have, there'll be another option down here that's missing on mine. If you sign up for invitationals outside of, Virginia Science Olympiad, and they're using Scilympiad too, and you get your account linked in onto their sites, then you'll have something that says switch to another host, and it will know which tournament you're going to, and you can, with a click, you can switch to another host. So that's kind of a nice convenient thing. I can't set that up and show you that because this is my test practice account and I can't register it at any other tournaments. So you can see why I can't, but you get the basic idea. Follow your noses. I'm going to talk for a minute now about registration fees. All right, so first you want to make sure you have the right number of teams registered. At this point, I have 2. And then you click on registration fees. Now, actually, I have to tell you, as I said, I have 2 divisions that I'm practicing with. My Division B account is all paid up, so I'm going to go to my Division C. Did you see how I did that? I could switch up there. That's kind of cool. Okay, so in my Division C account, I have 1 team registered, and they haven't paid yet. So I'm going to go to, I could do it from here, or I could do it from the head coach dashboard. I can pay for registration fees. Now this will look a little different for not for every team, but for if you go to an invitational, their registration fees or discounts may look different. So you'll have to always read. But this is what happens in Virginia. And in Virginia, most teams get no discount. Right. The discounts that Science Olympiad gives are if you have a large proportion of your student body that is on the free and reduced lunch program. Now, if you think you might qualify for that, I ask you to contact me and I will confirm it with you before you pick one of these discount codes. We also have a place where you can look, again, on the registration page, the free and reduced lunch percentages. If you were with us last year, you can look on there and see what your percentage is and also know. But always before you choose a discount, confirm with me. This multi-division school discount, that's for schools that are fielding both B and C in order to avoid a certain kind of double counting that happens. Again, check with me. That's going to be like Dominion Christian, Tandem Friends. And so, but most of you will have none as the discount. And that's what I'm going to show you. So none. And then it takes you to a page where you can either pay by check. If you want to pay by check, you can make an invoice. If you want to pay now and pay with PayPal, you can do that here. If you've goofed up and you need to make changes and you're just checking it, you can go back, say make changes. You can keep doing that. If I say pay by check, it will print an invoice for me. And then I can print this invoice and hand it to whoever I'm going to need to have pay it or pay it myself or whatever. And then the system will record that I have said that I'm sending a check in and we will be looking for it. Let's say you messed it up and you suddenly realize you goofed and you don't want to met that. You can cancel that pending payment, come back, still haven't paid yet. A lot of you have, I've seen this happen a lot of times with high schools. Your front office wants an invoice that is dated that day, and you have created an invoice in the past. You can fix that up here yourself, right? If I want to pay the registration fee, I pay it by check. I go back to my dashboard. I go back to registration fees. It tells me that I've already printed the invoice. I can reprint the invoice, but I can cancel that pending payment and redo it with the today's date. So hopefully that makes some sense. If you're paying by PayPal, you have to be logged into the school's account to pay by PayPal. So if you're passing the obligation to pay on to someone else who is using PayPal, use the invite coaches function. You can always delete their coach account from your system after you paid everything you need, but you may want to keep it until all the invitational fees that you might accrue have been paid too. Or, and my husband would be angry with me for saying this, you can pass them your login credentials just to do the payment, and then change your password after they've done it. But somebody has to be logged into essentially the school account. Again, don't have them create some kind of new account out there and try to pay it, because it won't be linked, the payment won't be linked to your account. You always have to go through the invite coaches to get all of you linked together to your school account. All right, so I showed you how I did this. I'm going to go back to the Division B. I only wanted to show you the Division C so we could talk about payments, but my Division B team's all paid up, all ready to go. So you can see if you're in a situation like this, if you're a school that has both B and C, it's important to know which division you're looking at. You won't be able to look at both at the same time, but it says it up here and it's easy to switch back and forth. All right, so now let's take a look at submitting, the fun things, right? How do you get students on your team? How do you make the teams? How do you get them assigned to events? All right, so we're gonna hop over here to this submit student team roster. I know the word submit is there, but don't be worried about the fact that the word submit is there. All right, it doesn't mean that you are submitting a final version of the roster. It's actually where you go to do a lot of the functionality that you're going to do after you get through all this registration stuff. So when you go there, all right, this is where you have a spot for a pool of students. Now, these are not the students that are going to be necessarily on the team. This pool of students will follow you from tournament to tournament. This is one of those things that travels with your account, so that if you registered another invitational, or if you go to states with us, or if you go to our software practice day, you'll still see the same list of students that you've got in your pool of students. So this is where they all live, and you enter them yourself. You can either add a student individually, or you can import, I think, a CSV file to get the students into your system. All you need to enter is last name, first name, and grade. Now, there's a spot where you can enter email. I recommend that you don't do that. It's not necessary. It's not required. And not all school systems, FCQS, not all school systems are happy with, comfortable with you entering student emails into this system. All right. So if you don't enter student email, that's okay. What it's going to do is it's going to create a login ID for them that's not their email. You'll see that I did do one with an email. This is my practice account. That's an email, when it's, for somebody named Kitty Emmons. But, all of these ones have a login ID. And that's, I think, the best way to do this. So don't enter email. And in fact, some of your students may not even have an email if they're young enough. Deleting a student from here. If you delete a student, that does not delete them from a specific tournament. It deletes them from your pool. It means, they're not part of my program. They'll never be on any of my teams. I don't need them. All right. So don't delete there. Now, there's several other columns in this interface. There is something called alternate. You could check that box to call a student an alternate. Now, this is not something that one of the confusions about this view is, while this list of students stays the same and travels with you, for a tournament, these column does not travel with you. Because the idea being that you could declare somebody an alternate for one tournament and not for another tournament. which makes an intuitive sense. I actually would ask you, at least for anything in Virginia, you just ignore that column because we don't allow alternates at regional tournaments. So, and there's no need, if you have more students on this list that you're going to be able to put on the team, there's no need to call them an alternate or anything. You could just don't add them to the team, which I'm going to show you how to do in a minute. There's this thing called release submitted. That also varies by tournament, and it's actually really important. I'm going to do a whole section on that later. So we're going to talk about releases. These are the releases that the parents sign to say that the student can participate. There's a column called release okay. Now that's an upcoming functionality that you won't have any control over. That'll be us looking at those releases and saying, yeah, we see it, we agree, it's okay. Finally, this registered, this does not vary by tournament. So that's again a weird thing. It means that your student has successfully made their own little student account using their login ID and a password that they'll create so that they can take the tests. Remember that if we're going to take the tests online, you're going to have to, in your system, have the student, you're going to have to match the student up with the test or with the event they're participating in, and then they have to log in to be able to do it. So this is a great column. It will tell you that this student actually went ahead and made the account and is ready to go. So you'll want to keep an eye on that, which will automatically be checked. And you'll want to keep an eye on this. And again, I'll tell you about how to do this later. So what does it mean for a student to make an account? Well, again, as I said, they have to get a login to get into the system to take the test. Ahead of the tournament, you'll need to send each student their generated login ID and the name you entered for them, the exact name you entered for them. So if I entered for Sammy Davis, that Sammy Davis needs to know this login ID. They need to know Sammy. They need to know Davis. If the student's name is really Samantha, she still needs to know that you entered Sammy, because that's the way that she's going to get linked into your account properly. So you'll send them the login ID and you will send them their first and their last name. Now I'm going to log out here for a second from being a coach. The first time students log in, students do not, and I know this is confusing, students don't log in through the login system. This is part of kind of protecting student confidentiality. They don't have logins in the same way that coaches do. It's really important. So what they do instead is they go in through take test using login ID, right? So they'll click on that. The first time they do it, they'll enter their login ID. They'll create a password. It will say, oh, this is the first time you came in. It will ask them their name too to make sure that it matches up. And then they will need to remember that password, and that will get them into the system. So that's how students do it differently. They go in through take test using login ID. They can also find it under tournament, going to the student dashboard, take test using login ID, but do not send them in through the login. Then they'll be trying to create one of these bigger like coach accounts or different kinds of accounts. That's for those sorts of accounts. Students are different. Now it's not worth really bothering trying to send the students in until a few days before the first tournament, because there's not really anything to see. I will show you the one that I did. I did it, the one with email, but again, you don't want to do it by email. Let me, there's not really, take a little time to log in, sorry. There's not really anything to see. I have 2 tournaments that I'm signed up for. I'm going to go to, let's say, the practice one. Oh, look, there's a machines test in there, but it's not even going to open until January 16th at 10:40. I could click on it. Yeah, I don't want to do that. So they'll see an interface like this that shows them that the tests that are available for them to take and when they're available and so forth. But those tests usually aren't finished and written and published until a few days ahead of time. So they may come to this and not see anything until they get close enough to the tournament. On we go. So let's go back to being a coach, because that's the fun part and that's what you're here for at the moment. So we've got our students in this roster or this pool. Now, how do you get them onto teams? Well, you click students to teams, and then you do kind of the obvious thing. You're like, oh, here's my list of kids. I'm going to put these two on inclined planes, and John Wayne and Jack Klugman can go on pulleys. There you go. Pretty cool. All right, so they're on teams for this tournament. Again, the tournament is specific to, this is your regional tournament, right? This is the Virginia Science Olympiad domain, the portal. If you're in an invitational and doing somebody else's, then it's going to be specific to that tournament. All right, so we've done that. Now we have, okay, let's assign students to events. This is really cool. Which team am I going to do? I'll do the pulleys, and I'm going to put Jack on disease detectives, and he's doing ornithology and food science. Oh, and John Wayne's doing right cat it. You see how that works. So you click these. Now the color system is very useful. It's very important that all this is linked to our event conflicts, right? So these 3 orange ones are events in conflict. Jack can only be on one of them, right? If I try to put them on 2 and I save it, this is a spot where you need to save it. It's going to give me an error message. Whoops, a student has been assigned to more than one event to the same color-coded block. Fix it. So, okay, whoops, it wasn't disease detectives. Now I can save it and I can see it. Or if I try to assign more than 2 events or 3 events, you know, if I try to assign more kids to an event that is allowed for the team, let's go over to inclined planes. And I try to assign 3 students to disease detectives. You can't do it. More than 2 students assigned to the event disease detectives. Please uncheck the extra students. So, oops, it shouldn't have been Joan. It should have been Sammy. There we go. So you go through these, and it will recognize these are events that are being held at the same time, and a student can't be in 2 of them at the same time. And it will keep you from making that mistake. Helicopters and vehicle design are self-scheduled events, which means that they can be, and we'll talk more specifically about that next hour, but it means that then that you will help schedule when they're going to happen. You can pick any time. So for these 2, they can be in both of them because those are self-scheduled, right? They're not in conflict with any one specific thing. Save my changes. And there I go, back to the team roster. Now, I need to tell you, so you can do some of that. You can make your team, you can make your pool of students, fine. But until you've completed registration with us, you can't access putting the students on the teams or putting the students on events. So that's important, that you need to finish all those steps of registration, which includes a little bit of paperwork, and it includes paying. And when you've done that, we give you a temporary team number so that you can access that functionality and see it. Let's see. So let's look at event schedules. You can see what kids I put on which events, which is kind of cool. And I'll show you something later that actually includes the time block in there too, which is really, really spiffy. And then this will be a summary for you of who's doing what. We go back. Email students, that's only if you include emails, and all it does is email them and push them to make an ID. Again, I don't encourage that, and it's the only email you can send students out of this system, so you'll need your own email somewhere else. We don't worry about principal certification. We'll talk about releases. All right, we're heading back to the dashboard. Let's see. So this is key. This is where you're going to do a lot of stuff. But when you come over here, you can view the scheduled event. You have the event sign up, you have the view the scheduled event blocks. So these are the scheduled event blocks. Again, you may not be able to see that until you have a team number, which you get after you complete registration. But you can see the exact times in the tournament that these events are happening. Event sign up will be an important thing that you'll go to later. This is where you like sign up for the specific event. You say, yeah, my team's going to participate in anatomy. My team is going to participate in circuit lab or code busters or crime busters or whatever. And for helicopter, I'm going to pick which one I want them to be in. So this is where you do that. It doesn't open until January 2nd for this tournament. We want to make sure that we have everybody, we're waiting to open the sign up for the specific events until after we close registration and everybody has indeed settled into a regional, right? We don't want a lot of hopping around while we have the signups happening. That would be really confusing. So, but this opens, you can see when it opens, and when it does, you'll kind of do the obvious thing. This will say assign, you'll click assign, and you'll go through this process. So let's see. Again, this is tournament specific. If you're on somebody else's event site, it might look a little different. Let's head over to some other things you can do from the coach dashboard. Invitational sign up. All right, so let's talk about this for a minute, and we'll talk about invitationals even more in the next two sessions. Actually, we're going to talk about them in events too, because we're going to talk about what invitationals are doing event-wise, what we're seeing, what I know about that. But you can see a number of invitationals that are open and accepting enrollment that are being run by Science Olympiad or Scilympiad. So in other words, that are using this system, that are being virtual online using this. But this is a strange interface. To actually look at them, you actually have to click sign up and then it signs you up for them. And you don't really want that. I find this awkward. Instead, if you think that there's one on a certain date that maybe looks good, I would Google it. So, Google the Christensen Cougar Invitational. Remember, it doesn't matter where they're happening. They can happen anywhere. You can go to an invitational in Alaska if you want. Google it, see what they're saying about what they intend to do, and then you can decide whether to sign up or not. If you do click sign up, though, it doesn't absolutely perfectly require you to participate, right? You're not official until you've paid them. But it does get you into their list. You would start getting emails from them. So you don't have to be hesitant to do it, but don't just casually do it and go through and sign up. I do want to show you, though, that there is an invitational that is happening in Virginia. Here it is, the Lake Braddock Invitational. This is a Division B invitational. And the Lake Braddock students are writing and running all the tests. And they're going to run exactly our regional slate of events. So that's a really great one to sign up for, to plan to go to. So now remember, just to remind you about invitationals, you have to complete your registration with us before you can attend an invitational somewhere else. And invitationals check, it's going to be public information. So like if you go to the front of our Scilympiad site, they'll see participating schools. They can see how many teams you've paid for and who's paid. And they check. You cannot send more teams to an invitational than you have registered with us. So that's also another important thing to keep in mind, right? And I'm not telling you have to do invitationals. I'm just recognizing that because we're not limited by our physical location this year, people may be looking at more of these things than not. Okay. So I'm going to go back now. We're going to go back to the coach dashboard. And I want to talk about release forms. All right. If you've been with us in the past, You know that VASO requires every student to have a parent signed permission. And in the past, we've done that in the VASO portal, where once the parents filled out the online permission, the student shows up on your roster ready to be assigned. Well, you can obviously see that Scilympiad is different. You enter the students into your system. And in fact, so we're going to go back to you need to enter the students into the system before you start that process of releases. So each tournament may have a different release. That's something for you to be very well aware of. But of course, at the moment, we're worrying about our Virginia one, our Virginia release. So student releases require a parent account in Scilympiad. I'm not exuberant about that, I'll be honest, but it's the way it was written. It's the way they do business in California, where it was written, and that's not something that's going to change for this year. So please be collecting the parent emails for your students. The students cannot sign their own release. The release information and instructions should not be sent to the student, right? You don't want the releases signed through a student account. The parents will need an account to do the releases. And I know that's not ideal. But on the other hand, if you're going to several tournaments, or when we go to states or anything else, that parent account is going to come in handy time and time again, because releases are done through Scilympiad in this system. And a parent account, if they have multiple students, they can use the same account for all the students. If they have kids in different schools, they can also use that account for all of their children that are participating. So that is the plus side. And the other cool thing about this is when it's done correctly, and I'm going to explain correctly, the releases will automatically check off on your roster for each tournament. So you'll be able to easily see them getting checked off. So how to have parents do the release. All right, so back on your head coach dashboard, there's a spot called release forms. You click on that and it gives you a link. This link is unique to your school/division. Like actually, I have one link for B and I have a different link for C. All right, so this link is unique to your school and to the tournament you're in. That's how the parents know and find out which release to sign and what school it's linked to. So if you have a parent, and then you need to send this link to the parent. If the parent has, let's say you're Langley High School and you have, and they have a child at Langley and they have a child at Cooper, this link won't do for the child at Cooper. The Cooper coach has to send out a different link. So this is unique to you, to your division, and to the tournament. So you may have to do this with a different link for a different invitational or whatever. When they click on the link, so you send this link to them. This is only for students. I know it says participants, parents, volunteers, proctors, guests. We're not all in person. We only are worrying about it for students here in Virginia. All right, so you can ignore that line. When the parent gets the link and they click on it, the first time they're making it, it will ask them to log in. And if they don't log in, they'll have to make an account, and that'll be fine. And then they need to click on the link again this time and log in and read and fill out the permission for the student. In addition to sending the parent the link, if you want it to match up automatically, you have to tell them the first and the last name that you entered for the student. In the same way that the first and the last name you've entered for the student matters when the student is making an account, the system is searching in your pool of students for the right student to match this release up to. So they have to have the exact name. When we go back to the head coach dashboard, and I go into here, I can go look at the signed releases. So I can see here that Sammy, Kitty, and Jack have signed releases, and they're all done over here, and I can see that. So that's how that happened. Remind the parents that the link only works for your school, for your students on your team. If they have the participating students in another school, they use your account, your link, that student's going to show up under your signed releases, but you won't have any way of transferring that release to the correct school, and I can't do it either. So they'll just have to do it again with the correct link for the other school. I know that sounds a little bit confusing. It's actually hopefully relatively straightforward, and I'm going to write up a very specific set of instructions only about that for you all to give to parents when you send them the link. And we will be watching these releases. Your student cannot participate without the signed release. It's particularly important this year because the release includes a section where parents are confirming that it's okay with them that we interact with their student on the internet in this fashion, right? There are laws about interacting with minors on the internet, and we need to make sure that we need to make sure that we do this properly, and getting this permission is very important to us. So even for your students who are 18, I'm going to ask you to please have a parent sign this release. It also says that it's okay that they do Science Olympiad in their home, engage in the activities in their home. The release is important. I mean, it's always important, but there's a particular level of importance this year, and we're going to be watching to make sure. I mean, I'll be honest, you can click this, but we'll see the signed releases. And so it's better if you just let that happen naturally and automatically through the signed release system. All right, what else is important on the coach dashboard? Let's get back there. You don't need for us to worry about supervising an event supervised sign up, or ordering a meal. That's a California thing. That's not volunteer opportunities, none of that you need to worry about. Documents for head coaches. You can see the registration paperwork is there if you need it. If you want to see the actual schedule for the tournament, it's there. The event conflicts are there even too. But you don't really need a bunch of this stuff. You don't need like tournament maps, past winners. Our FAQs are going to appear on our own Virginia Science Olympiad site. The resources, most of that goes to the national website. That's not really useful. The coaches Google group, that's not well defined. I checked that out. That's not run by us. I can't get rid of these headings. So just know that most of this is not anything of particular value. You can update your coach profile. That can be useful to do. It puts you can tell it the competition phone for the day of the tournament. And then on tournament day, this is really cool when you get to this spot. There's a spot to monitor your team. You'll see the events. You'll see the kids. You'll see if they've logged into their tests and follow them on that. So that's pretty cool. A reminder to everybody, we're going to have software practice day on January 16th. And for 2 hours. They're not going to be real tests. It's going to be kind of silly questions, but 20 minutes per session. But it will practice Scilympiad, but it will also practice all the other software that's going to need to be used, because not everything will happen in Scilympiad this season. We have a number of events that are going to need additional software components. We're going to talk about that during events at 11 o'clock today. But just so you know that. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to take a look at the chat and see what the questions are. All right, it says, only the head coach can input the roster, or can co-coaches do so too? Co-coaches can also input into the roster. All right, somebody's asking about software practice day. So there's another place. You know, in California, they're doing a software practice day that they're opening to schools from all over the United States. So I think you're confusing that, right? So that is happening in November sometime. They are, and I think they're full. I'm not sure that they can take any more teams for that anyway. That filled up quite quickly, but I know we do have a few Virginia teams that got into that software practice day. I recommend ours highly because we're not only going to practice Scilympiad, which is what you'll get if you do this one in California. We will practice every piece of software that we will be using in the tournament. And we're going to be looking at the tests that are already written for the regionals and make sure that we practice uploads and downloads and everything. So I cannot recommend ours enough. You cannot sign up for ours yet. We haven't opened it yet, but we will, and anybody who wants in will be able to get in. All right, let's see. Can you only, okay, Division A is completely different. It won't get added to this dashboard. Division A has not made decisions yet about whether it will be using Scilympiad. Please do not try to create, you remember I showed you, don't create a Division A bit to this, right? I know I told you, like, here's where you could set up another division. We will be in touch about Division A, but no, Division A is not currently using Scilympiad. Discussions are happening about that. So don't look at that for Division A yet, all right? Can you only see the invitational once you paid your dues and completed your registration process for your teams? You can see invitationals here always, whether you've completed your registration process with us or not. You may not be able to sign up for them. I think you can't sign up unless you've paid us, because the system knows you haven't actually got official teams yet. Now, I believe it might be possible to bypass that if you Google the Invitational and you go to the Invitational site and see how they're doing their sign up. They actually may want you to sign up a slightly different way through a Google form and then Scilympiad or stuff. There really is a lot of value in going to finding the Invitational website and seeing what they're saying rather than just blindly clicking on it here. But I don't think you can click on or sign up for any of these until you've completed our registration. Can you register for the Lake Braddock Invitational if our check has not yet been received and cleared? Our treasurer's heading to the post office tomorrow, and so hopefully we should see a whole bunch of checks be cleared in the next few days. You can go to the Lake Braddock site and see if they have a method of signing up. I think that they may allow you to sign up without going through this interface, but if you try to go through this interface, you can't yet. I know that's confusing, and I apologize for that. There's so many new of us trying to figure out how to do this, and this system has been used for a number of years in a number of states, but we've never had this kind of opportunity before, and we're all trying to figure that out. But I would encourage you to just get paid. Right, finish your registration with us, and then you can do everything, and it's straightforward. Am I right in assuming that our students will not be able to get their login ID to use on November 7th if you don't pay for Virginia First? You're going to get a login ID for November 7th. You know, for this November 7th practice thing that we were talking that California is doing. You're obviously registered for that, Andy. And you're asking if they can get their login ID to use on November 7th. You can have, let's go back to the coach's head dashboard. As soon as you enter a student onto your roster, they'll get a login ID. So they'll get those as soon as you enter them. But I will tell you that the people who are doing the November 7th practice will contact me in another week or so, and they'll say, are these teams completed registration with you? And I will have to tell them if you are not. So if you are intending to participate in something that that styles itself as an invitational or so forth, you must have completed registration with us. So I encourage you to get on that because I know they'll ask me. I know who's running it. Let's see what else we've got. How many events can each child participate in? What's the cutoff? It's as many as you want. I mean, obviously they can't do more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because 8's all they could fit in a day or fit in the schedule, but you wouldn't want them to do that many. 2 or 3 is pretty standard for students. Are all Science Olympiad Invitational nationwide virtual? No, they're not all virtual. Some of them might be under a system that's partially virtual where you're required to do the build events at your school with signed permissions of a different sort. I've heard there's one in person. So get on their website and read. But the chances are very high if they're listed in Scilympiad that it's entirely virtual. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can expect from other invitationals during the events section today. Can parents sign releases while we're waiting on the payment? Absolutely. You can start that release system today. But let me write up those instructions and send them out to you so it's completely clear what the parents need to do so they're not confused, because the parents, I know that parents have been a little confused about how to do this in other situations. A little confused about invitationals, please explain how do they help us? I will talk about invitationals in further detail in the next hour. Cannot see invitationals, only team count. Okay, maybe because you can't, because we don't have you paid yet. Okay, if there's a typo in the student name, do we have an option to just update the student name instead of delete the row and re-enter all the details? I guess not. I guess you have to, just delete the row. No, you have to delete the student and re-enter, but that's okay. Just do it. It's not that much information. It's just last name, first name, and grade, and they'll get a new login ID. So make sure you've got that right before you send out login IDs. New coach, can you explain how to get payments from students and then pay overall for the team from there? That's going to be very school specific, and I would like to defer that question to the next hour too when we have, I'm not a coach, right? So when we have a couple of coaches with us that can talk to you about ideas about how to do that. It's a great question. So we've not signed up yet. Registration for Division B, C should be done this week first, right? Well, you can sign up when you're ready. Registration is open all the way until the end of December. Right, I'm going to go back to the registration page. These are the instructions you have until December 31st. It's just, if you feel like you want to do any of these practice tournaments, which is what an invitational is, and an invitational is a practice tournament, you have to pay more for invitationals. I will say that now, but it is a practice. It's only a practice for regionals. You don't have to take them seriously. You can go, you're not, whatever. You don't have to do invitationals either, right? I've probably freaked a bunch of people out. That is not a requirement. Lots of teams participate in Virginia without ever doing an invitational, all right? But if you want to participate in an invitational, one of these practice tournaments, you have to have completed your registration with us first. State directors talk to each other. We ask each other when we have an invitational to check to make sure that the teams that we're having in our invitational are fully registered. So that would be the only hurry, is if you're trying to get, if you're trying to be registered for the invitational. And I will tell you, probably a lot of invitationals will take your registration with them as you complete hours, right? So you can start this process, you can start checking, getting on these websites if you want to do this. All right, so let's see. Do you need registration for the practice? For the Scilympiad practice in January? Well, the Scilympiad practice is in January for Virginia, the one that practices all of the software that we're going to be using. And if you're not registered by December 31st, you're not participating at all in the season. So yes, you have to have completed your registration by that. Can parents sign releases while we're waiting on payments to go through for registration? I answered that already, but I'll say it again. Yes, they can. I would just wait. Let me write up those instructions for parents. I will do that very soon. And then that way you can send the instructions to the parents with the release link so they know exactly how to do it. It'll be a little bit more clear to them. But yes, they can work on that while you're waiting for payment to go through for registration. Can you remind us how many seniors could be on a team? You can have, wow, it's 7, right? Division C coaches, am I right at 7? I'm not looking at my notes. Yes, it's 7. You can have 7 seniors on a team. Okay, I'm going to put an end now to the Scilympiad piece of this. We're going to do, in another minute or two, we'll start our session on just coaching in general. So, and then at 11 o'clock, we'll do events. If you have more questions about Scilympiad you need answered, I'll still be on at noon and you can come back and chat with me then. Thanks, everybody.